A warm welcome to the program today. I'm Susan Ilian in Lagos. We're learning people in Gaza will be relying on generators for electricity if they have fuel to power them. It comes as residents complain there is no internet, electricity, or water. They complain they do not deserve to die. The main electricity has gone out in Gaza after the Seoul power station ran out of fuel. Since Hamas's attack at the weekend, Israel has imposed a siege of Gaza, cutting its supplies of electricity, fuel, food, goods, and water. More Gazans we understand, are seeking shelter in schools and overcrowded hospitals as Israeli airstrikes continue. In Israel, however, air raid sirens have been heard in the north and the south, with injuries reported as rockets land from Gaza. The Israeli military says it has massed troops near the border with Gaza, including 300,000 residents and reservists, rather. At least 1,200 Israelis have been killed by Hamas over the weekend, while Israeli forces have killed more than 1,000 people through airstrikes in Gaza. And getting water is becoming tough in Gaza as the fierce strikes from Israel continue. One resident spoke to says they no longer have basic needs for life there. No water, no bread, and there are children with no diapers or milk and nothing of the life necessities. As we mentioned earlier, Israel has already tightened its blockade of Gaza, fully banning food and fuel imports and cutting the electricity supply. This comes as Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant warns that the price Gaza will pay for its attacks in Israel will change reality for generations. On Tuesday, Israel refused a request to bring food and medical supplies into the Gaza Strip. The Secretary General of the Executive Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Hussein al-Sheikh, confirming that the Gaza Strip is facing a major humanitarian catastrophe. The passage of people and goods is strictly controlled under a blockade of Gaza enforced by Egypt and Israel and was closed for the movement of goods, according to the United Nations Humanitarian Office. In the meantime, humanitarian workers in Gaza have warned of a deterioration and in the situation in the enclave as Israeli airstrikes do continue. More than 22,600 residential units, 10 health facilities, and 48 schools have been destroyed, according to the Palestinian Foreign Ministry. The health ministry in Gaza says at least 900 people have been killed and 4,600 wounded in the crowded coastal enclave.
Nowhere in Gaza is safe, and this is the general feeling of the entire population, not only myself. I had to move my family for 3 times so far in the last 24 hours based on information shared for larger communities in Gaza by the Israeli authorities or the IDF, asking them to move and evacuate this area and go to another area without clear instructions or safe passages. And this is a concern for the public, but also for the ICRC. The lack of clear instructions and safe passages could lead to more devastation or civilian loss, especially when we are witnessing an intensified, round of escalation and airstrikes. Gaza, we have delivered a medical shipment recently that includes medical and non-medical items, stretchers, disposables that are crucial for, providing or the provision of, primary and emergency healthcare. It's basically life-saving, and we will continue to do this based on our capacities. We are also aiming at navigating, providing support for the other actors in the water and wastewater and energy sectors. We have invested a lot of our efforts and the nation in supporting these essential services and systems, and in order to make them more resilient in times of crisis.
Israeli warplanes have been bombing Gaza repeatedly ahead of a possible ground offensive there, while U.S. President Joe Biden has described the Palestinian militant group's surprise assault on Israel as sheer evil. Video posted on social media showed smoke and damaged buildings in Gaza skyline as munitions fell from jets. According to the United Nations, more than 180,000 Gazans have been made homeless, many huddling on streets or in schools. Israeli forces have also been shelling southern Lebanese towns in response to a fresh rocket attack by Hezbollah. Houses and a mosque were seen hit and damaged, but Hezbollah says it fired precision missiles at an Israeli position in response to the killing of its members in Israeli shelling earlier this week, pledging decisive responses to attacks on Lebanese territory, especially deadly ones. The Israeli military says it is attacking Lebanon after one of its northern positions near the Israeli town of Arab al-Aramashi was targeted with anti-tank fire today. It has not provided details on casualties. Residents of the southern Lebanese town of Ramesh said Israeli shelling hit nearby, while Israeli artillery rounds are hitting the rocket launch point around Daria, across from Arab al-Aramashi. Hospitals in Gaza are said to be overloaded with patients, and doctors fear they will not have medication or medical supplies left. Spokesperson for the Ministry of Health, Dr. Ashraf Al-Qidra, says there is need for a safe passage to receive medical supplies in Gaza and to be able to take the wounded people from Gaza elsewhere to get them hospitalized. Israel has vowed swift punishment for the deadliest Palestinian militant attack in its history that left corpses strewn around a music festival and a kibbutz community.
Mr. President Joe, I want to thank you for your continued and unequivocal support and the work of your entire administration to support us. The Israeli people were deeply moved by the emotion that Admiral Kirby showed in his interview yesterday. It was deeply moving, and it represented the depth of commitment that you have, your administration have, and the American people across the board have for Israel. Joe, I want to give you a clear picture of the difficult situation we face. We were struck Saturday by an attack whose savagery I can say we have not seen since the Holocaust. I mean, we had hundreds massacred, families wiped out in their beds and their homes, women brutally raped and murdered, over 100 kidnapped, including children. And since we last spoke, the extent of this evil, it's only gotten worse. They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them. They beheaded soldiers. They mowed down these youngsters who came to a nature festival and just, like put 5 jeeps around a depression in the soil, and like Babi Yar, they mowed them down, making sure that they killed everybody. We've never seen such savagery in the history of the state, and they're even worse than ISIS. They're even worse than ISIS, and we need to treat them as such.
And that was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking in that video. Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen has shared a picture of a billboard by a road in Israel. Alongside it, it reads, "Thank you, Mr. President," referring to the U.S. President Joe Biden. It comes as the U.S. is boosting military aid to Israel, with the first plane carrying U.S. arms arriving in southern Israel on Tuesday evening. The Israeli army says advanced ammunition had arrived at the Nevatim Air Base, and it was meant to enable significant strikes and preparation for additional scenarios. Over in the White House, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says at least 20 Americans have been missing following Hamas's attack on Israel over the weekend. He said U.S. intelligence and security forces did not know how many of those Americans still unaccounted for were being held hostage or if they were among the dead.
And to those families undergoing the unfathomable pain of having loved ones missing, our hearts go out to you. We cannot imagine the anguish you must be feeling right now. We know that U.S. citizens are among the missing, and we know that U.S. citizens, as the President just said, are among the hostages. We are working with the Israeli government and with our regional partners on every aspect of the hostage crisis, including sharing intelligence and deploying experts from across the U.S. government to advise the Israeli government and coordinate with them on hostage recovery efforts. As the President just said, there is no higher priority than the safety and well-being of American citizens being held hostage overseas. We do not know about their condition, and we cannot confirm a precise number of American citizens. We believe that there are 20 or more Americans who at this point are missing, but I want to underscore and stress that does not mean necessarily that there are 20 or more American hostages. Just that is the number who are currently unaccounted for. We will work hour by hour both to determine whether we can account for any of those Americans or to confirm exactly what the number of Americans are being held hostage, and we will come back to you with that information as soon as we have it. As you know, very sadly and tragically, the number of dead has risen with each passing hour, and that's true of the total number. It's also true of Americans, which has gone up just today from an earlier report this morning of 12, then 13, now 14. So I cannot give you a precise number. I can tell you that number of unaccounted for at this time. That number could change too, but I want to underscore that that is not a statement from me that we have that many hostages. We do not know the number of hostages we have at this time.
Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, welcome to the program. This is a huge number of Americans whose whereabouts are not known. What is the administration doing to find out more about their safety and their location?
You're correct. This is a large number of individuals for something to be outside of the United States. And as we look at the relations between the U.S. and Israel, we know that there's always been strong ties there. We also know many Americans have family members that still live in Israel or that are there because they decided to go to Israel to relocate. And so, as you've stated before, there is about 20 or more that are missing. There are obviously some casualties, about 14 to be exact. And we also know that, as you stated, what is going to happen next? We know that there has been some advanced technical support that has been sent to the region. We also know that the Secretary of State is on his way. Secretary Blinken is on his way to Israel, so he's actually going to be on the ground evaluating the situation. He should be there within the Wednesday night or early Thursday, and so we know that that is going to be the beginnings of where we're going to see what the U.S. will begin to do as it relates to their involvement with this, what has been called a war.
Tell me something, Maria. President Joe Biden has been on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as you know, maybe about 4 times already. And Israel has received its first batch of advanced ammunition from the U.S. At the same time, the U.S. has warned about other countries taking advantage of the war. So I'm wondering, isn't this regarded as the U.S. taking advantage of the war, or at least actively participating in it?
You know, I think when you talk about actively participating, it's a question that Americans are asking. I think regarding around taking advantage of the war, I think the relations between the U.S. and Israel have always been so close, and we do have a very large Israeli population in the United States, a very large Jewish population in the United States, and so that is, I think, speaks for itself as to how the U.S. would be very much engaged in this war. But the real question is, as they talk about technical support, ammunition that has been sent over, we know the Secretary is on his way over. Are there going to be troops on the ground? I think that's the question. As we all know, the president was very clear with the conflict between Ukraine and Russia that there would not be troops on the ground and we would not engage in that war. And so, as we know, there has been a very clear indicator that there's technical support being sent. There has not been any claims that any military boots on the ground will be provided at this time.
Okay, that's very clear. But, you know, as we know, America is a strong ally to Israel. You mentioned it just now. So any involvement is naturally expected. But has what is going on in Israel and Gaza affected America's decisions on the war going on in Ukraine?
Unfortunately, our internal domestic politics are also going through some challenges. We know we don't have a Speaker of the House at this time. It was being voted on at 10:30 today. So some of those dynamics do play into whether or not the U.S. is going to be able to be actively involved. And as it's been with Ukraine, providing a lot of financial support, obviously strategic support throughout their entire war. So is it sustainable for the U.S. to be actively involved in the way that they've been with Ukraine, and also to be actively involved with Israel? I think that is a question that I think will have to be answered very soon. But unfortunately, at this time, as we look at Congress, there is a division there that is existing, and there is some challenges domestically with being able to move forward with the rule of law.
All right, I want to know, in addition to Americans missing, there are also brightens and ties. There are discussions going on about whether they've been rescued, where they might be, how these ones might be rescued.
Well, that I think is where we talk about the technical support that's being provided. And I am sure that Admiral has been involved in conversations with the military, with the intelligence community within Israel regarding what they know. And so the U.S. has definitely been on top of this since Saturday. They are going to definitely be working to ensure the hostage safety and security for those, as I said before, they're not quite sure how many there are, and also to begin to get answers for those who are dead and who are missing. And so that is going to be the top priority for the United States, in addition to providing military support through ammunition and other strategic abilities.
Final question to you, Maria. There have been protests supporting Israel and Palestine. I'm wondering, what does the American public feel about what is currently going on in Israel and in Gaza?
You're correct. As we know, our U.S. government and most of our local governments have also come out very much in support of Israel. We know that that has been a long-standing relationship, but there are some Americans who are Palestinian that live in the United States, and there have been some pro-Palestine protests. And so that is, I think, the question is being able to, they've been focusing on a difference between Hamas and Palestinians. And so I think that's where you see the difference here in the U.S. when you talk about the support. It's really behind civilians and people. And as we know, the president has been very clear to say that any death and casualty is one that is not wanting to, obviously the U.S. does not support. And so at this time, I think that we're looking at a very divided piece. We know the U.S. is also beginning to ramp up security in cities like New York, which has the largest Jewish population, and also in Washington, where you have some of the largest embassies. And so that's, I think, going to continue to be a question, but we are very clear as to where the U.S. government stands with their support, even though there are small communities within the United States that are going to be supporting Palestine.
All right. Thank you very much, Maria. Welcome back. As you already know, there are casualties on both sides of this war, and it's becoming imperative to focus on the humanitarian aspects of the war. The situation indeed has been dire.
Sitting on the ground in dismay in front of dead bodies wrapped in white sheets, Ghassan Ala Al-Kafani has lost 8 of his family members, the only survivor. He was injured and with his arm in a cast, fled 2 locations with his family before being hit by an Israeli airstrike that killed his pregnant wife, his brother, father, 2 cousins, and 2 extended family members.
We received a message to leave Beit Hanun town, so we went to beach refugee camp. They threatened the building we were in, so we went to find safety in the beach camp. But the building we were in was also threatened, so we had to move to Sheikh Radwan town, where we stayed in an apartment there. Suddenly, around 4 a.m., a strike hit us, and we don't know why. We have nothing, and that's all.
This 21-year-old Israeli woman is in despair and says she has no tears left after most of her family members went missing on Saturday after a Hamas militant attacked their keyboards, and video emerged showing our 12-year-old brother being taken away by gunmen. Gaya Kaderon, speaking from Tel Aviv, begged for the safe return of her family taken from houses in Nairo's kibbutz.
And in the video, I see Erez. Erez, my younger brother, who was with my sister and my father. And I see that they're taking him. And he's like screaming a little bit because he is hurting. They are hurting him here. It was so hard to watch. I never felt like this. I don't even have tears anymore in my eyes. I can't cry because I cried so much.
But unlike many other similar videos of Israelis being taken by Palestinian militants, Kaderon noted that her brother didn't appear to be shot or bleeding, which gave her hope that he was alive and the family were all together.
What can I do? I'm freaking out, and just thinking about my family. It's my whole family. Like, I'm the only one that's safe, and then no answer from her. And then I see in the group, in the family chat, she's writing, "Mom, I love you." So I knew it's probably because she knows it's the end or something.
Gazan woman Samal Abol Latifa fled her house in the Abbasan area of Gaza to Khan Yunis, hoping to find safety. Instead, she lost her brother and 2 more family members in an Israeli airstrike.
We had fled from Abbasan area, escaping from death. There were continuous airstrikes over our heads. They told us to come to Khan Yunis. We came to find death. If we stayed in our houses, we die. If we go on the streets, we die. Oh, my beloved brother, he fled from one place to another. May your soul rest in peace.
Abu Latifa and others say they haven't witnessed anything like this in previous wars, currently taking refuge with a family in a nursery. Abu Latifa is concerned about the coming days. Unable to hold back her tears, the father of young Israeli woman who was abducted by Palestinian men and taken to the Gaza Strip says he is heartbroken over not being able to comfort his daughter. Noah Al-Gamani was captured with her boyfriend on Saturday morning in Israel's bloodiest attack in decades, when Hamas gunmen rampaged through the Israeli towns, killing 600 and abducting dozens more. The couple had been at an outdoor dance party near the Israeli kibbutz of Rain. Al-Gamani's friends and family recognized her in a video circulating on social media shortly after she and her boyfriend stopped communicating from where they had hidden and asked for help.
Terrorized. I don't think everyone ever has felt such terror and such helplessness when you're taken away from your boyfriend, from your loved ones to some place unknown with terrorists. And I can't imagine what she's going through right now, traveling with those terrorists in Gaza, waiting for someone to send help.
Fighting between Israeli forces and Islamist group Hamas is ongoing at 7 or 8 locations near Gaza 2 days after Hamas gunmen killed hundreds of Israelis and abducted dozens more in the deadliest raid into the Israeli territory since Egypt and Syria's attacks in the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago.
Pope Francis has called on Hamas to release all hostages captured over the weekend during its attack on Israel. He has also expressed grave concerns about the total Israeli siege imposed on Gaza. Pope Francis said he was worried by the siege in which Palestinians live in Gaza, and the Pope's mention of Israel's right to self-defense followed diplomatic pressure from Israel for him to make such a statement, following earlier statements from the Pope and Vatican officials, which Israel saw as too timid. After his weekly general audience in St. Peter's Square, the pontiff also asked the faithful to help Afghanistan, hit by another major earthquake that rattled the western part of the country today, just days after one of the world's deadliest earthquakes killed more than 2,400 people and leveled thousands of homes in the area. Meanwhile, evacuations are underway in some parts of Gaza today. People, including journalists, have been seen loading up vehicles with their belongings as they seek safety amid heavy shelling. Just a reminder here that Gaza's health ministry says at least 900 people have been killed and 4,600 wounded in the crowded coastal enclave, while Israel's military said the death toll in Israel had reached 1,200 and more than 2,700 people had been wounded. Amidst the fighting, burials have been going on for the dead. Volunteers have been helping to dig graves, working overtime at Israel's main military cemetery. Of the 1,200 Israelis killed in the raids and ensuing clashes that began on Saturday, 160 have been identified as troops, with at least 10 of them residents of Jerusalem near the Mount Herzl National Cemetery. Named after the late 19th century writer Theodor Herzl, who envisaged the creation of the Jewish state, the cemetery is the final resting place of many Israeli leaders and local soldiers. It is sometimes likened to the U.S. Arlington National Cemetery. Bombardment in Gaza has been heavy, so heavy, in fact, that some Palestinians living there say they feel they are living their own Nakba, the Arabic word for catastrophe. That refers to the 1948 war of Israel's creation that led to their mass dispossession. 22-year-old Plessia Al-Aqad, who is a journalist, has been filming personal accounts of life under bombardment and posting them on her Instagram account. She says she had to evacuate 3 times. After her apartment block was hit, she took refuge in a friend's home, but then got a call it would be targeted too.
I've experienced in the past days is like nothing I ever experienced in my whole entire life. I lived in Gaza my whole life. I studied abroad and I came back. I've witnessed many aggressions before, many intifadas, but like what I'm witnessing now is an updated version. Like, okay, me personally, as a civilian and as a journalist, I obviously expected that there would be a response, but honestly, that intense, no one expected that. I'm sure of what I'm saying. What's happening is crazy. The situation is crazy. Literally, no place is safe. Me personally, I've evacuated 3 times since yesterday. Like, okay, they tell you to evacuate. You go to a friend's house, then they call them to evacuate. You go to another friend's house. Like, situation is just terrible. It's just terrible at this point. Also, the fact that we don't have water, we don't have electricity, we don't have internet. Like, I've been trying to talk to you since yesterday. Maybe the internet situation is really terrible. The video that I posted, I swear it happened by coincidence. Like, I was just posting because I knew they told people around us they wanted to bomb a university and a tower. It was close to my house, okay? So but they didn't tell us to evacuate. I thought we would only hear the sounds of bombs and that would be it. I thought my building was safe, but there is nothing safe literally. So I was just filming how like neighbors were staying with far away from the windows. Then suddenly the whole bombs happened. Like you can hear it now. You can hear it now. Literally bombs happen at any minute. So it's by coincidence that I'm filming, then bombs happen.
Staying with the war between Israel and Hamas, I want to bring in former Minister Plenipotentiary to Israel and concurrent ambassador to Cyprus, Ambassador Lawrence Obishakin. Ambassador Obishakin, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me, Channel TV.
Thank you very much. I just want to get in with my first question, sir. The focus is slowly changing to the humanitarian situation on both sides. For Israel, it's recovering bodies. For Hamas and for those who live in Gaza, they're also recovering bodies and still facing the reality of Israeli airstrikes and shelling. On the side are people calling for peace. Tell me, how are you processing what happened this weekend and the aftermath? What's your take on it?
Well, first and foremost, as a Nigerian diplomat, career ambassador, I must express deep sympathy and condolences to both sides of this unfortunate, what I would call fratricidal war between the two sons of Abraham. It's unfortunate that we are hearing 1,300 on one side, children, women are dying. You know, it's unfortunate. It's difficult for us to process, especially Nigerians. They have interest on both sides. You know, our policy has always been the two-state solution. You know, one state being Arab, Palestinian, and another state being Israeli. Both of them living peacefully side by side, according to the UN resolution of 1947. And nobody will be happy to hear that people who are celebrating, you know, biblical things, historical, cultural things were being killed. But then when you look at the history, you know, there have been at least 7 wars now between Israel and the Arab world. The 1948-49 immediately got independence. The 1956 Suez Crisis. The 1967 Six-Day War. The 1973, the Yom Kippur War. And this one looks like it, because it was a surprise war and attack too. Then 1982 Lebanon War, which Israel had to invade southern Lebanon. And then the second Lebanon War of 2006. But the world was thinking that they were getting over it. That, you know, when you have people who want their land, and you have the UN that has promised to give a land, a nation, to Palestine, and they are not getting it, it's frustration. And that's why you can see what Hamas has done. It's not, nobody will like children, women being killed, and then people being bombarded in their sleep. But you have to look very, very deep into this.
Ambassador Obishakin, I want you mentioned a two-state solution, right? The Israeli government has said it's not focused on that issue with Palestine for now. It's been shelved, if you will, even though many have seized this opportunity to call for a two-state solution now to end further bloodshed. How can you imagine both sides returning to the negotiating table after this?
Well, they have to return, because this is an unwinnable war. So this war has been on now for years, and in fact, predates the creation of Israel. There is a fact of the clash of civilization, and that's why Nigeria can be of help, since we are friends to both sides. You know, Israel has to, we can understand, because for several years, Israel has not been this killed. But then, the Palestinians have been killed. We have to be fair. They've been killed in thousands. In their sleep, they've been frustrated. The UN has a great portion of the blame in this matter. The UN had promised a state to the Palestine, and they've not got it yet. The Oslo Agreement didn't give them. I was in Israel for about 5 years as a diplomat, and I know what it is. I was even a victim of the Intifada in 1987. I was leading a delegation of Nigerian Christians, and we're there in Jerusalem, and then the pilgrims insisted I must take them out to buy things. I said, well, there's Intifada. We were captured, but what saved me was that Nigeria was a friend to both the Palestine. They asked me to call to prayer in Islamic mode, and of course I do know. That when you say Allah Akbar, whatever I say next is,
that is a huge relief.
It's affecting every one of us. They must find a solution to it. Israel cannot say, I know it's an emotional outburst. They've seen blood, but then they just have to negotiate it. It has to be negotiated. Negotiation always ends all war.
Ambassador, now the U.S. has sent a plane full of ammunition to Israel, even though it warns others not to take advantage of the situation in Israel. And I posed this question to somebody earlier. It is indirectly, do you feel that it's indirectly helping Israel fight this war?
Yeah, it is, that's why I say this is an unwinnable war. You see, what I was going to say was that every diplomat prays that its domestic battle problem should not be internationalized. Unfortunately, this has been internationalized. And what is, it's also a typical example of the hypocrisy of multilateral diplomacy. I must tell you, my professor of international relations of blessed memory said that when you want to deal with a nation, take that nation to the multilateral forum. There you can do something, surreptitiously, vote against them, campaign against them, and when the result comes against that nation that you don't like, you say your hands are tied. It was agreed at the multilateral area. The U.S. is like a father. It's a UN, the USA. The USA is part of the permanent members of the Security Council. They are the police of the world. But then the UN declared yesterday through President, the US declared yesterday through President Joe Biden that they stand strongly by Israel, and they've signed their asset, one of the greatest, to the Mediterranean, to support Israel. And we even heard now that the first set of armament has been given to Israel. There's no doubt. Everybody has a choice. You can choose your friends, but then how can the U.S. also become a mediator?
Right. So, Ambassador, what should international organizations then do, such as the UN, other than calling for cessation of hostilities? What role do you think they should be playing?
Yes. You see, it's true Israel has the right to defend itself, but then they don't have the right to annihilate it. The Geneva Convention on War does not allow people to do collective punishment, to stop water supply, gas supply, power supply to Gaza, which is not yet, a state, and then look at it. The UN should call for, but it's difficult to stop. It's I will use an African proverb, a Nigerian proverb. When you are holding the leg, the bony leg, but well roasted of a goat, if you throw it away, they will say, oh, how dare you throw juicy meat away? But if you are eating it, say, how, old man like you, why are you laboring so hard to eat ordinary bone? You see, it's a dangerous situation that the world is now. And I can tell you, it's like Armageddon in waiting. Because the US says no other power, no other party should come, but it is supply arms. We have to be fair. We have to be fair. It's a dangerous situation. But who is going to judge the US? It's a world power. But we just hope that some powerful countries will not feel sufficiently, encouraged to wade into this war. It might then become the Third World War, or, as some theologians say, the Gog and Magog War of Ezekiel and Revelation chapter 14. It may be towards the close of the war itself. It's
Ambassador,
a dangerous moment we are in now.
Ambassador Lawrence Obisheken, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. I just want to confess, to make a strong correction. I was the minister plenipotentiary in charge of political matters and economic matters in the state of Israel, Tel Aviv, from 1998 to 2003. But I was ambassador to Israel. So that's it. I was the political desk officer.
Thank you very much for the correction. We stand corrected. Thank you.